talk about like my journey studying for the MCAT. So I took the MCAT, the first time I took it, I did it after my, I think it was after my third year. So yeah, after my third year in college, in the summer, I was studying for it. So I took a summer course from the Princeton Review, and they gave us, like, with that course, there was a like physical classes nearby my house. So I would go to those every day, and we got a pack of MCAT textbooks with some practice questions there at the back. And so I took that course, and it would basically just be like a didactic class. And then after, we would do those practice questions, and we would get sort of like some homework where we'd come home and work on practice questions. And I think they also had some online practice questions that I put into my schedule as well. Other than that, I didn't really refer a lot to, and this is the first time I was writing the MCAT, I didn't really refer back to like my class notes, which is something that I wish I really did. The Krebs cycle or glycolysis. There are really good explanations that my professors taught. I mainly just stuck to the Princeton Review textbooks, and that is one thing, again, I wish I hadn't. I wish I had used other resources in terms of like collecting information. And I don't think I had heard of the MedPros psych soc, as you mentioned, like when I was taking the MCAT. But yeah, my main like source of information just when I was studying for the MCAT was just those Princeton Review textbooks. And then I did their practice questions. And other than that, like I think the best resource for me was the AAMC practice questions and the practice tests. But even when doing that, as I mentioned before, I don't think I ever sat through an entire practice test like on the weekend. I had it planned, but it's so hard. You're at home in that environment. Like you can't sit there for, I would start doing it. And then when it would simulate the break time. And then I would just go downstairs and like start eating and would never come back. So I'd have to pause the test. So it was never like, I don't think I ever actually sat there or took an entire day off and just focused on the test. That was one of my weak points, because in med school, you have no choice. Like you have to sit there and study. Practice tests, you have to sit there and do it. It's just, there's no other choice. And so I guess that is one thing that the MCAT does prepare you for in med school, is just sitting in one spot and then just like you're exercising your brain, nothing else. You're not using any other part of your body, just your brain. So yeah, I didn't do that. Honestly, those were the only resources that I used the first time I took it, I would not recommend only using one source of information. As Ateh mentioned, definitely go back to like your class notes. If you find them helpful, incorporate those. And I didn't have any kind of like spreadsheet or even just like a notebook where I would write down concepts that I struggled with. I would be more of the person like, oh, okay, I got that wrong, and just read the little description like, okay, I got it, which didn't work. I mean, I got a decent score in the first when I wrote the MCAT the first time. The second time, I actually just used the same textbooks. The second time I wrote it, it was after I graduated. I took a year off. I was just like working on ways to improve my MCAT score and med school applications. So the second time I wrote it, I used the same Princeton Review textbooks. I did use I think I redid the AAMC practice questions. And the second time, I believe I did go back and like incorporate some resources from my like school lectures. But other than that, I didn't use one of the major resources that I now think as a med student is so helpful is YouTube. There's so many people on YouTube just ready to give you advice like us. like I really wish I used YouTube more. And I definitely wish that I had gone onto YouTube and just searched like, what is a MCAT study schedule, because I didn't really make a really good study schedule for myself either. I think I sat down for where I took like around like 5 or 6 hours every day to study for the MCAT. And I studied for about like, I think 3 months, if I remember correctly, for both times I took it. But yeah, YouTube, especially just what other people did, how they studied, what resources they used. Like if I was, and again, like I didn't focus on, I didn't keep track of like what concepts I was getting wrong. So that is one thing I definitely wish I did. As you mentioned, Ateh, just keeping track of like, what do I not know? Because it doesn't hurt to keep track of it. It doesn't take that long, just on a spreadsheet, as you mentioned, or even in a notebook. Okay, is this a concept I need to review? If I get another question on it, and then if I don't know it, I don't know, just like make another note, still need to review. If I get it right, then just like, okay, I think I know this question now. So that is something that I do now as a med student. I do keep track of what things I'm getting wrong. And I don't think UWorld was also available when I was preparing for the MCAT, but UWorld is definitely a huge resource that med students use. Yeah, I don't think, and I took the MCAT, I don't remember the year, but it's been a few years. It's been a few years. It's been a few years. I don't think UWorld was available, but yeah, I didn't have that mentality also that these practice questions are teaching you as well as testing you. They're not only testing you, right? So now as a med student, when I'm doing like any question bank like RX or Kaplan, or any like AMBOSS I use as well, the explanations, they're there to teach you. It's you don't be hard on yourself if you get, when you're like doing practice questions for the MCAT, if you get something wrong, that would sort of hurt me, like hurt my ego, I guess. But like I wouldn't, because I got it wrong, I wouldn't want to look at the explanation, but that is absolutely not what you should be doing. Look at what the explanation is telling you, apart from just not keeping track of concepts that I was weak on. I didn't really, well, that was one reason I didn't really focus a lot of my time on the concepts that I was weak on. I would sort of distribute my time equally on things that I already knew, and then and then the equal amount of time just reviewing things that I needed to spend a little bit more time on. So, like when you already know something, you study a little bit more, you know a little bit better, and you get those questions right, and you feel a bit better. But you get the things that you don't know that well, you're still going to get them wrong. So, definitely very important to keep track of what you do not know. It's okay if you fail the practice tests. That's how you're going to learn. I think I did like 4 practice tests, and that too not even in one sitting, which is something I wish I had done differently. Again, I wish I had, when I was taking the practice test, at least like closer to my test date, just forcing myself to sit there, getting myself prepared, because test day was absolutely long. I just wanted to be over with it by the time. I remember both times when I was writing it, by the time I was in the psychology and sociology section, my mind is not here right now. Like, I just want to go home. This is exhausting. So definitely using those practice tests to teach you, to test you, but also to train you to just sit there and endure the time that you have to exercise your brain for real when you're taking the MCAT.
Thank you, Tina, for sharing. I think it's really important that you were sharing what you found were strengths for you. And you were also kind of reflecting and sharing with our viewers that, hey, like, this is something I wish I changed. I really liked how you were saying that, yeah, your ego might take a hit when you say that you got the question wrong, but this is low stakes. Like, let your ego take the hit now. Like, you don't want to have it take the hit when you take the test. Like, you want to be able to hit that confident hit that button confidently when you say, yes, I want this exam scored because I know that I did my best. Obviously, we are really high pressure on ourselves, right? Like Ateh did well on her test. You ended up doing well on your test. I did well enough to be able to get into med school, right? Like we all ended up doing well, even though we were hard on ourselves, maybe crying during the test or crying after the test. But it's like that pressure we put on ourselves anyway is there. So you want to make sure that you do your best in your study time. So when you go and take that actual test, like you're giving your all. And for me, I feel like there are a lot of factors that kind of impact my ability to study efficiently and effectively. Like you said, Tina, it's important to make a schedule, and that's something that you regretted that you didn't necessarily have. You just kind of knew like, hey, I'm studying 5 to 6 hours a day, and that's my schedule for 3 months. I mean, it was still a schedule in a way, but we hear that Ateh was like, okay, like these are when I'm doing my practice tests. This is when I'm reviewing X, Y, and Z. And I think order like that really helps a lot because you're literally able to check off your milestones. You're able to, check your progress week to week. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind. Now, what did I do? I will not talk about the first time I took the MCAT because I didn't do well, and there's no reason to share something that didn't go well. What I will say is the reason why I found I was able to experience a 13-point increase is because I didn't do the same thing I did the first time. The second time around, I started integrating MCAT study material into my weekends and my weekdays as a master's student. My spring semester was a little bit lighter for me. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, I was going to do MCAT practice exams. I was going to be in the library doing MCAT practice questions. Now, I also used to just read the books and write down notes, which was a waste of time as well, because you're not retaining it as well as you should. I had to go to YouTube and watch people like Car Beauty and other people that I found on YouTube who scored very well and say, what did you guys do? Because I want to do well too. And yeah, like it's not to compare to anyone, but all of these people that you can find on YouTube who are sharing their tips and information for free will give you some insight on things and resources that you can cling to help you in that journey as you adjust to what works best for you. And the first thing that I did do for myself was make a schedule for myself. So I knew between the January and May before I graduated from my master's that it was going to be like, not before I graduated from my master's, the year before I graduated from my master's, that I was going to be like extremely busy at certain times. So I just made like 2 days a week to say, hey, I'm going to start integrating my MCAT studying, but I knew it wasn't going to be like 8 hours a day because I didn't have that time, but I was okay because I still wanted to get my mind wet, right? Like start getting little hooks in my brain for some of these MCAT related concepts. Similarly to Ateh and Tina, I went through the AAMC list of the topics that we had to know that we were expected to know that were high yield, because the high yield topics are the things that you're going to see on the test. You don't need to know the little minuscule details of 60% this and like you need to know the high yield stuff. And if you don't know that, then you will see that you don't know that on the practice test and the real test. So that's something that I was glad that I did in the beginning. And then I transitioned to just saying, okay, this is what my summer looks like. And this is what my schedule is going to be. For me, I could not study every single day. I studied maybe 4 to 5 times a week, and I took 1 to 2 days off. For me, it was also a very big battle of the mind when I was taking the MCAT the second time, because of course it was, what if I do worse than I did the first time? Of course it was, oh, no pressure, girl, but you're trying to submit your applications and you need a good score because you waited a year or 2 years before you applied. So it was all these mind stuff that were coming up for me as I was studying. And so I knew I had to intentionally take 1 or 2 days off just to reset and to do things for me so that I can hit it hard when I was back to studying. For me, I started my day early in the morning with a workout, and I went to the library and I studied for about, I want to say 10 hours a day before I came home, had dinner, and just kind of flipped some flashcards. Similarly to Ateh, I had the AAMC flashcards. I also used the AAMC website for practice exams. I used the AAMC flashcards, and then I found out about Anki, I think from like Reddit or something. And so I used Anki for the psych social section because that was like really, I had a hard time like remembering theories and all of the stuff associated with psychology because I didn't really have a strong psych background. So I had to flip my Anki. Like I remember being in the library on my lunch break, warming my food, like standing in the microwave, flipping you know, my Anki, like finding ways to incorporate my study into my day. And I remember also making use of free YouTube videos, right? Like making use of the Kaplan videos on the MCAT, making use of maybe Ninja Nerd or just different people that were on YouTube that I was already using for like studying for my regular lectures as an undergrad or as a master's student. And I incorporated that into my schedule. But I could not sit there with all my Kaplan books that I had and all my total Berkeley review books that I had and my Princeton review books that I had and my Kaplan flashcards and say, hey, I'm just going to read everything. Like that's my goal. No, I realized that the first time around I was reading and taking notes and it was just going like this. And so the ways for me to know that I knew anything was by doing practice questions. So I like had those physical books because I didn't want to like stare at a screen all day on my Monday to Friday. And I would like go to the end of the chapter and do those questions, time myself and go and look and see what did I get right or wrong. And I would write down different things like tips and formulas and whatever from the physical books. I would take the flashcards with me and flip them. Like maybe I'd go walk, get some fresh air. I'd be flipping my cards, right? If I was warming my food, I told you I would be on my cell phone flipping the Anki. And then when it came to like closer to the exam, I think I did about 5 practice tests. I did like one every week leading up to the test, and I did a full length test. And then I reviewed everything that I did on the test and to see like, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? Unfortunately, I didn't even think about doing a spreadsheet. Like I love that idea, but yeah, I did try to focus on what did I get right? What did I get wrong? What was my score in this section? What needs to improve? And in the last those last 5 weeks, I also started making what I called like my MCAT cheat sheets. And so at the end of the week, based on the questions that I had missed, I had handwritten formulas and I had handwritten diagrams that would help me remember, and mnemonics help me remember the things that I kept missing or that I just could not seem to remember. I think I had access to all the psych soc terms. I don't know if it was MedBros. I don't know what it was, but I printed that out. I had a hard copy, and every day I was flipping through new psych terms. Like every day I was using that resource. And so all of that to say, like, you kind of have to immerse yourself in the MCAT in that dedicated time that you take to study for it. And yes, I do think it can be a good idea to incorporate MCAT study throughout your undergrad journey as a pre-med, like having the books and like seeing what the books say that align with your lecture. Like that's great. You might even find a mnemonic in there that will help you with your current lectures. So like, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do say like, if you want to do well, like you do need to orchestrate your work and your research and your extracurricular schedule so that you have a consistent, committed block of time that you're really just studying for this exam, because it's a heavy exam. There's already pressure. You have to overcome the mind game. You have to overcome comparison, and you really just have to focus on grinding hard for you and for your future, which obviously you can do it. All 3 of us on this call have done it, but we hope that, you know, the tips that we have shared and the links that we'll drop down in the description box can be helpful for you on your journey. And we also hope that you will share some of your tips, because other people who are watching this video can learn from you too. Like, so drop it in the comment box. Like, we want to know, what are the things that you've done that have helped you do well on the MCAT? What are the things that you are doing to help you prepare for the MCAT? And then I'll just say, like, based on my study schedule, for me, if there was one thing I changed, it would have been like just making sure that I was consistent in reviewing those questions. I didn't do an amazing job with that in the beginning. I was kind of like what Tina said, like, oh, I got this wrong. Then you see something similar and you get it wrong again. So I really wish that I took it more seriously to really understand, why did I choose the wrong answer? What were the other answers? Like, because some questions look good and they might be a kind of correct answer, but they're not the best answer. Like, test exam makers like to do stuff like that all the time. And unfortunately, you don't get credit for those questions that were kind of true, but they're not 100% true. So you need to know how to study effectively to get the right answer that first time. And I just want to, like, last thing I want to say is like, when it comes to the mind game of the MCAT, whether you're taking it once, twice, 3 times, like, really just don't give up on yourself. Like, you know that your journey into medicine is bigger than you, and you're doing it because you have a heart to help populations one day. So you cannot let this test master you. You will master the test, not vice versa. You will master the MCAT, not the MCAT mastering you. And you just need to find what balance looks like for you. Some people cannot afford to not work, right, while they're studying for the MCAT. Some people cannot afford to not be taking classes, and that's okay. But what works for you? Like, does that mean that in this season you might have to sacrifice hanging out with some friends every day, maybe only meet up with them once a week so that you can study a few hours a day and flip your Anki or use your AAMC for practice exams? Like, I don't know. Like, so you just need to find what balance looks like for you. And remember that as you're studying and you're missing things, the stakes are low. Allow yourself to miss it now, but think to yourself, do I really want to miss this again? Like, when I see you, question, when I see you in the future, like we're gonna not have this thing where I'm missing you because I didn't take time to understand why I missed you the first time. And that's something that you'll actually have to remember and recall in your journey in medical school too, because you have to do practice exams and practice questions. And in your studying for your boards as a physician, like, you need to be able to look that question in the eye and say, like, okay, like,
you're not gonna get me this time.
You're not gonna get me this time. And so, anyways, I'm not trying to babble, but I believe in you guys, and we really hope that everything that we have shared today helps you feel more encouraged about your MCAT journey and helps you have some clarity on like developing a study plan that works for you.
I have some things I would like to say if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So just in terms of some things that I didn't mention earlier and just miscellaneous tips and facts about the MCAT, I think that when you're approaching studying, the first thing I want to say is what I really did. And the reason that my study schedule may seem a little crazy is because I said to myself, I'm going to study for this test like I'm taking it once and only once, because I cannot sit through it more than once. And that's not the case for everyone, and that's okay. But I think that for me, going into the test day, it's comforting to be able to say that you've done every possible thing you could do, that you exhausted every resource, that you put your all into it. So I think when you're approaching studying, when you're getting into it, just try and put your all into it, and it's going to really, really help when you make it on test day, and whatever score you get, that you put your all into it in that moment. I also want to say that the scores that you get on some of these practice tests can really be an indicator of whether you should take it in that moment. The reason I rescheduled, I was originally supposed to take it January of my third year, and I rescheduled it based on how I was doing on practice tests, and I definitely don't regret that. Because I mean, they are to some extent pretty reflective. The Kaplan tests, not as much, but what you're getting on those AAMC practice tests, you will probably get within 3 or 4 points away from the practice scores you get on the AAMC practice test. So if your scores on the AAMC practice test are not anywhere close to what you want to get on the real day, then it's probably something that you should postpone or reconsider for a little bit, because it tells you where you're headed. And the day of, I think I got 1 point higher than my highest AAMC practice. MCAT studying, I know it's really, really expensive. And I was one of the people who did not pay for the class because I couldn't afford it in the moment for me. But there's so many ways that you can figure out studying for the MCAT. And for some people, getting that class, if you can afford it, can be so helpful. And there are actually some ways that you can find to finance that. So if that's something that you want to look into, that can be great. But there are also a lot of free ways that you can study for the MCAT. And it's really important that you look into those resources. Look at the YouTube channels, look at blog posts, Google things, because there are so many free resources. Honestly, between Kaplan, Princeton Review, and the miscellaneous MCAT websites around there, you could probably get all your practice tests for free. You just have to find those resources, and some of the things we'll put in the description box. I'll try and find some of those free resources to post, but there's free notes, there's free books, there's free practice tests and practice questions. And if you can afford to study for the MCAT, that's definitely okay. The barriers in price for studying for the MCAT are ridiculous, and we have to find ways around that for something. And the last thing, MCAT Bros. MCAT Bros, or Med Bros. I don't know if it's MCAT Bros or Med Bros, but follow them on Facebook, follow them on Instagram. They try and put out tips and free resources also. I got a lot of resources from the Facebook group and from Instagram. And okay, now this is the last thing I want to say about balance. I think we all took the MCAT at different phases in our life, and so we have to study at different phases. And for me, I know it is difficult. I think in the last couple months, I took it the summer after my third year. I was taking 5 classes in that spring quarter. I was working 2 jobs. I was working on my personal statement for medical school. I was finishing the application. I had every type of stress, and I know that it can be overwhelming. And so it is so important to find balance, because you can burn out. And I know we've said like incorporate it into every part of your life, and that's really helpful. Like I had apps on my phone, I had these videos that I would play when I was walking or working or doing whatever. But it's also important to find time for you. And there were some weeks where I would take the practice test and I would say, so this is the same score I got last week. And then I would just need to take a break. And that's okay. You need to give your brain a break, because if you burn out, it's going to be so much worse for you. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like this is rough, this is hard, I have a job, maybe you have kids, maybe you have so many other things happening in your life, please don't be scared to take a break, to take a breath from it, and to find out how you can balance this in everything else that you need to do to remain physically and mentally healthy and happy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's all I want to say, other than you all can do it. You can do it. It's not an easy test. And even if you don't get the highest score, you don't need to get the highest score. You will still get into medical school. I promise you, it's possible.
No, for real. Like,
thank you so much. Yeah, that is absolutely amazing advice. Basically, that is what I would tell incoming pre-meds as well, like our incoming medical students. That is what you need to live by. You need to take breaks. You can't just let these practice tests get to you, which is something that I did. And as a medical student now, all of this advice all those things that I have changed from my studying for the MCAT has helped me throughout medical school so far. So definitely everything that Ateh said, everything that Aliah said, and that I mentioned as well, we have learned from what we've done. Ateh has definitely done a great job on her MCAT, and we congratulate her for that. And do not worry, you will get into medical school even if you don't have the highest MCAT score. You don't need to be studying all day, every day. Give yourself a break, and sometimes that break contributes to an improvement in your score as well. You need to take that relaxation time. And one other thing is ask what other people have done. And I think we've mentioned this multiple times. This is why I say mentorship is such an important thing from an early stage as a pre-med. Ask what medical students have done. Ask what other pre-meds are doing. Just Google what your question is. And that is something that I did not do. I didn't search for the resources that were out there when I was preparing for the MCAT. I just didn't think of it. But as a medical student now, all I'm doing is like, what are other people doing? I'll ask Aliah, like, hey, what are you doing for this final exam? Like, what are you doing? Or I'll like ask other friends, and then I'll sort of use what everyone tells me. Definitely, I'm not going to do everything that everyone tells me. I'm going to sort of pick and choose what I like to do, and then incorporate that into my med school exam studying schedule. Just a summary, some of the tips we mentioned throughout this video is know what kind of a learner you are, or at least in the beginning when you're starting off studying for the MCAT, you should have a feel of what you like doing. If you're not a reader, which I don't think any of us are, or at least that's not our primary source or that's not like our primary method of absorbing information. I absolutely love videos in med school. That's where I learned from, videos. And Aliah mentioned that she loves videos as well. Videos are amazing. YouTube's a great resource. Khan Academy is actually a very good resource. And I think I did use that a little bit for the second time when I was preparing for the MCAT. And then, yeah, so know what kind of a learner you are. Do not feel bad or do not feel down if you get a question wrong. Do write it down. Don't just brush over it. Keep track of what you need to improve on. I think that's the biggest thing that would have improved my MCAT score. This from the first time I wrote it to the second time, my score improved, I think, by about 4 or 5 points. I don't really remember, but again, it's not a huge improvement. It was a slight improvement, and I think I forgot to mention this before, but it was mainly because when I was preparing for the second time, I sort of, within my like daily studying hours, I sort of wrote down, this is what topic I'm going to focus on today. So that sort of saved me some time, just going through what topics are available and like what I have to study every day. So yeah, my MCAT improved by about like a couple of points the second time, but I still wish I had focused a lot on just what I got wrong. And third of all, this test does not define you. Okay, we mentioned this multiple times. You will get in to medical school, even if you have an average MCAT score. Your application is looked at holistically. What else do you like to do other than focusing on medicine? What are your other undergraduate grades? It's not just the MCAT. So good luck, everyone, to writing the MCAT, and we hope that you enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, share, and do everything the other YouTubers say. And we thank Ateh for joining us today. Thank you so much for providing all of your advice. We hope that what you said and what Aliah and I said did help all of our viewers in some way. And we will see you next time for our next video. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.